There's a comic book that's written by Alan Moore. You probably know him from his various other works like Swamp Thing, V for Vendetta, The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, or most notably, Watchmen. But he also had one other comic, one that would help pioneer the more darker and character-focused superhero stories. But it was also a comic that helped lay the groundwork for Watchmen. I'll even go as far as saying it helped to make Watchmen what it is. A masterpiece. This comic book going by the name of Miracle Man, probably the darkest superhero story ever told. But what makes it that? What makes this hero story so compelling and worth reading? I mean, when I first heard of Miracle Man, at first I thought, what kind of hero names himself Miracle Man? I honestly found the whole character kinda silly, even more so when I saw his outfit. It just looked goofy. And I remember asking myself, why is this supposed to be a good story? And there was only one way to find out, to actually reading it. And now, it's probably my favorite superhero story ever. Miracle Man, or during the 1950s known as Marvel Man, was a superhero created by artist and writer Mike Angelo. But the idea of Marvel Man was to just elegantly rip off another superhero popular during this time, Captain Marvel, which is why both characters are largely similar when it comes to how their powers work, where Billy Batson says the magic word that allows him to transform into Captain Marvel, and the same goes for those that are part of the Marvel family. However, despite being a popular character, the publishing company in England that made the comics for those who lived in Britain became bankrupt and eventually closed, and now Captain Marvel Billy Batson becomes Michael Moran, Marvel Man, where he says his magic word and transforms into a superhero. The stories that came out were for the most part simple adventures, where there was a problem a supervillain caused where Marvel Man would save the day with the help of his two buddies, Young Marvel Man and Kid Marvel Man. These stories only lasting a few years until Marvel Man himself became a footnote of the old era of comics, slowly dying and falling into obscurity in the world of comics. Until 20 years later, we enter Alan Moore. Alan Moore is probably the most interesting artist I've ever looked into. Alan Moore was the man who in the 1980s viewed comics as a medium that's just as intellectually challenging as any other, showing people of the time what comic books were really capable of, from dealing with themes of someone's sexuality, beliefs in the political system, or how we view the world as a whole, and telling us that it can be a beautiful place, but underneath, the world can also be unfair and unforgiving, with no remorse whether you're good or evil, with the use of superheroes being the gateway to really demonstrate these concepts and ideas in their rawest form, with Michael Moran being the first to change the history of comics forever, now in 1982 with his dream of flying being reignited once more, and Miracle Man reborn. Miracle Man starts with us following the Marvel family, with a simple art style and story that reminds us that it's still the same Marvel Man you remember, with the year 1956 and the words "and age of lingering innocence" written on the top right corner of the page, adding to the fact that this was a different time in the lives of these heroes, a time where no one would get hurt. They face off against a villain, and in the end, peace is restored by the end of their adventures, with the next page having Marvel Man stare straight into us as he is smiling, with each panel zooming closer and closer, accompanied by a quote which says, "Behold, I teach you the Superman. He is the lightning, he is the madness." And in the next page from a distance, we can hear Michael Moran screaming. He's having a dream, but it isn't a good one. The dream begins with Michael remembering his last mission as a superhero, and for the most part, everything is the same as before. Marvel Man and the Marvel family are tasked to defeat a villainous plot. No one gets hurt, and peace is restored right soon after. But this time, things are different. This time, the man who knows he's invincible is afraid. The trio approach this massive aircraft which seems to be abandoned, but they don't realize how wrong they are until it's too late. With the last thing that Michael is able to see is the world flashing before his eyes and his friends turned into ashes. The only thing he can do is watch and scream in agony. Then he finally wakes up and the dream is over. Now in present day, we see Michael Moran, Billy Batson, all grown up. And he isn't the small optimistic young boy who we knew that worked for a newspaper company all those years ago, but now a middle-aged man who's haunted by his nightmares. If anything, he just seems tired and lost with no sense of direction, constantly having arguments with his wife and trying to remember something important. Although he can't remember that one important thing he's trying to remember, that being the word that transformed him into a superhero, the word that changed his life when he was just a small little boy, the word Kimota. And later, during a terrorist attack, he finally remembers it. He utters the word and becomes Marvel Man / Miracle Man. He flies up to the sky and yells, "I'm back. I'm back." There's a moment after this that absolutely wrecked me for the first time I read it. It's where Michael Moran, now Miracle Man, heads back home after saving the day and regaining his power. He surprises his wife and begins to describe his life as a superhero back when he was in his prime. All his wife does is laugh, thinking that these scenarios never happened and that it's just little boy stuff that her husband made up. And he says, "Damn it, Liz, you're laughing. You're laughing at my life." This was the line that absolutely shattered me emotionally, because the enthusiasm in Michael's eyes to have finally found his reason, his purpose, only for it to be glossed over as some child fantasy by someone he cares about. It's almost how it feels when you were at school liking anime, comics, or whatever, and these things mean a lot to you, only for sometimes other people making fun of you for it. And the brilliance behind Alan Moore is that he was one of the first people to build that foundation and to look at a superhero character and just take the story seriously. Again, something that during this time didn't really exist before. And based off this foundation, that new Miracle Man stories were born, where now we had a story of a superhero who has to deal with a relationship in a realistic way, where now there were consequences to their actions and how that would affect them, but also the people around them. In one chapter where Michael Moran visits one of the team members from the Marvel Man family after many years, Kid Miracle Man Johnny Bates has become a wealthy businessman. He's all grown up as well, at least that's what we think at first. They have a bittersweet kindness towards each other, and Johnny Bates boasting about his accomplishments, until Michael understands that none of it is true and they're all lies. The story revealing that Johnny Bates never really grew up. He never changed back into the kid he once was, but suppressed that part of him. And now all that hatred and anger after years, with now the one man who stands in his way is the Superman of this universe. And Johnny's only plan is to destroy Miracle Man. Or in the next arc, where everything Michael Moran / Miracle Man thought to be his life was a lie. None of the superhero moments he experienced were real, but in fact fabricated by an evil scientist named Garganza, whose goal was to use alien technology to enhance the human body, keeping not only Marvel Man but also his companions within a simulation, which were the many superhero adventures they had, with the only real adventure being their extermination at the beginning of the comic, or even the time when Michael Moran's wife Liz Moran becomes pregnant with a child, which then raised the question about who is actually the father of the child, since Michael and Miracle Man are in a way two different people. The story describing this as when one transforms to the other, one of the personalities exists in a world called infospace, while the other is able to walk freely in the real world. And this causes real problems between these two characters, with Liz feeling incapable of taking care of a superhuman child, but also realizing her husband is slowly losing himself to his own power and leaving behind what makes him Michael Moran, with that last statement being ever more true in Miracle Man's final arc, Olympus. Olympus, without a doubt, is one of the most impressive story arcs I've ever read. By this point, chapter 11, where the arc begins, opens up with us in the present year of 1987, where things have changed immensely. You can right away tell that Michael Moran doesn't exist during this time period, only his superhuman self, Miracle Man. And what I absolutely love about this opening is the mixture of Alan Moore's writing and John Toddleben's artwork, where now Miracle Man lives in a world where he is viewed as this godlike figure. This demonstrated to us through drawings showing the inside of his newly created palace. The description of a literal book having only been filled with steel pages, with one of my favorite lines in the story, Miracle Man saying, "I have legends to write. Tales of how it feels to live in a mythology." Miracle Man picks up his pen and begins to write. The next page showing us just how much of a godlike being he has become, with two beautiful sculptures made of steel and a fountain of pouring water by his sides, his symbol above, the word Chronos being the first chapter of book 3. And the beginning into this nightmare of one of the greatest arcs to be put on paper. But it's also here where the humanity that we saw in the beginning of the story from a little boy who was gifted powers is now gone, is nothing but a god who has forgotten what made him human, what made him what people viewed him as. Not a god, but a superhero that saves lives, with Michael Moran committing suicide, allowing his other persona to live his life. And it honestly breaks me every time I read it. Or the moment later in the arc where Miracle Man and his group of superheroes save the world by eliminating all nuclear weapons, racism, death, and hunger, with the superhero team finding a way to give humanity the perfection we asked for by allowing us to become like them, heroes, so-called gods of mythology. But for Miracle Man, all of these achievements at the cost of the only person whom Michael Moran cared for, his wife, Liz telling Miracle Man that he has forgotten what makes her her, what he's making her give up by proposing the opportunity to become a superhuman. What's even sadder is he doesn't really care, and that's the last time he sees her. The ending of this arc being one of the most haunting I've ever read. Miracle Man stands in his fortress, a man now completely devoid of any humanity, of any empathy, a dictator who has improved the world and shown what it's like to be the zenith of the universe. He puts on his ceremonial outfit, which is found in his crystal room, perfection in its rawest form, a poem with no word misjudged, a diamond with no flaw. The next few pages detailing how now we humanity live in a world where gods exist. The very things we were afraid of, the things we dreamed of exist in this world, with the last 2 pages showing Miracle Man walking down the steps of his castle in the sky, looking down at humanity, wondering about his previous life, his accomplishments, his wife Liz, but most of all, were his dreams of flying fully realized, or was it worth to enslave humanity at the cost of his own humanity? Yeah, it's fucking dark. There's also a lot that I didn't really go into detail with this arc, like Miracle Man's relationship with his daughter Winter, how Miracle Man meets another hero that came from the same experiment by the name of Miracle Woman, the psychological trauma that happens to Johnny Bates and his second fight with Miracle Man leveling almost all of London. Like, there's a lot to talk about in this arc, and I'll probably make another video for it. But I think what fascinates me so much about this story and why it's my favorite superhero comic, it's not only for its great art and story and characters, but what it means, which is why when Alan Moore started writing Miracle Man, everything changed. We see the story of Michael Moran reignite itself and able to tell a story about a man who lost his way and the only thing keeping him going is the dream to fly again. But when that dream does come true, the world around him starts to crumble. Only this time he doesn't realize it until it's too late. And by doing that, Alan was able to take this godlike being and make him into something more than he ever was, making him more relatable to so many of us, but also allowed for others to see that comics are something of value and can offer something that other pieces of media can't. It was also Michael's dream of flying that allowed others to soar even higher, with stories like Batman Year One, The Dark Knight Returns, Sandman, and many other beautiful stories being born, with Miracle Man's story still being felt to this very day and becoming a masterpiece in storytelling, a story of the man of miracles. Hey guys, thanks for watching the video. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and turn on bell notifications to get notified whenever I do upload. And check out Miracle Man. It's a story that I feel deserves way more attention than it already has. But this has been GR Chris. Talk to you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Peace.